I can pull up Twitch on my phone real quick.
All right. So it's streaming and it's recording, but where is the stream? It says it's off.
Yep,
Huh?
we're good. It's live. Yeah.
It's live. So, oh, okay. Are you hearing audio out of that?
Let me check real quick. It's live. Yeah, it's gonna be delayed by a little bit, but it'll be like a 15-second delay, 10-second delay. That's just how streams
Okay,
work.
so we're gonna go to the main screen then.
Yep.
All right, Jeff.
Give me a countdown when you're ready.
Going. It's live. You can just go.
Okay. Welcome back to the On the Board podcast. This is a special edition here for the college football playoff rankings, which will be out in about 20 minutes or so. I'm here with Jack and Drew. Excuse me, Morgan and Drew. Jack is not here. He will probably be joining us later. But we got a lot to talk about. This last Saturday was probably the best week of college football we've had in a while. They released the AP rankings on Sunday with Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State rounding out the top four. Oregon is above Ohio State at the 5 spot with the Buckeyes at 6. Texas is 7. Alabama's 8. Those are the 8 teams that have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs. What do you guys think of this Ohio State deal? They lost to Michigan. It was the game on Saturday. It was great. Everybody in Ann Arbor was freaking out, and people on the Ohio State side still think they have a shot.
So I'm watching. I was at the Arizona State game. We got blown out by Arizona. They're a good team, not good enough to sniff playoffs, but there was a bunch of people watching it. I remember we were watching it during the game, and it was kind of because that was a bad game to watch in person for the Arizona State game. And I mean, it was a crazy ending. I mean, almost as crazy as the Iron Bowl ending, which we'll get to in a minute, because that was crazy. But I mean, it's certainly. I think we can say Michigan has beaten officially the fraud allegations and the cheating allegations. They've beaten both. They're a legitimate team. They're going to be in the playoffs. I think they trounce in the Big Ten championship game. I don't think Iowa stands a chance. But this puts Ohio State in an interesting situation where I still think they're probably a playoff team, but I think just because I think in my heart of hearts they're a playoff team, and in the way they play they're a playoff team, but because of the record and because there's so many other good teams that had good quality wins, I think they're going to be on the outside looking in the playoffs. I think it ends up.
Honestly,
I
honestly, yeah, it's a resume thing because I
yeah.
think Ohio State's
I mean,
probably the third best team in the country in terms of talent on their roster.
yeah,
It's just the problem is
absolutely.
every year they run up against Michigan in the second to last week of the season, so they don't get to play for the conference championship, and now you're out of a playoff spot because of resume stuff. And
I mean, it's
you know, I don't think that's I don't think it's right that they get knocked out because they have the second best defense in the country. They have a really electric offense when it's clicking, which isn't always, but they have the best receiver in the country. They have a great talent at running back, all that kind of stuff. And it's unfortunate that we're probably not going to see them in the playoffs if things shake out how they probably will next week, but that's just how it goes.
I mean,
So you
there's
look at Ohio State right now. They sit. I think the record is 11-1,
yeah, they're 11 and
and
1.
so 11-1. And a lot of the times, what the committee does, and this has happened to Ohio State a couple of times throughout the playoff era, is that they take into account that like you didn't play in your conference championship game, and so and like Alabama, they didn't play in their conference championship game, and I think 2017, I think it was. So with that being said, it's I think it matters if you play in your conference championship game. Like the SEC has an interesting kind of unique aspect to it, whereas if Georgia were to lose that game, like they might still be in. But the fact that
Yeah.
Ohio State doesn't even play a game this week, I think is what could potentially end up hurting them over somebody like Texas or Alabama.
Yeah, and that's what's
I
so
mean,
interesting about the whole conference championship thing game is because you end up with a team like Ohio State who deserves to play in a conference championship game, who effectively did that last week. It's basically everybody
yeah,
knows the
that was
winner of the game is the Big Ten champion, essentially, because they go and they play Iowa, who can't score the football on Northwestern, let alone the best defense in the country. So
yeah.
I feel like that needs to be taken into account more than just like I think that game is so much more important than say the Big 12 championship game, where you've got
Yeah,
Texas who are a bit of a powerhouse, but they're playing Oklahoma State who are ranked, but they're not ranked highly.
yeah. They're a good team. It's just not, it's
Well, I
not
think
anywhere close. I think they're what 19, which is respectable. It's just not. I mean, Iowa being in that game too is just painful because they're
Mm-hmm.
18, and realistically, what we should have is and should be an Ohio State Michigan conference championship,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not going to happen, unfortunately.
but
Obviously, which is
isn't the game Ohio State versus Michigan last regular season game of the year? Isn't it essentially the Big Ten title game?
I mean, it
Well,
is,
that's what I
but
mean. Is that it's basically the Big Ten title game, and it gets treated with a little less reverence. I think.
it,
Right, and of
it
course, when you look at like when you bring up the Big 12, I gotta have to disagree with that because Oklahoma State has a chance to knock Texas out. Granted, the Texas is the massive favorites in that game, um, but I mean, I think that when you look at especially Texas too, let's get on them for a minute. If they lose, they're done, right? If you get two
Mm-hmm.
oh
losses,
yeah,
you're
Two losses, you're out. Especially this year, two losses, you're done.
right.
I mean, they're
So
fringe right now anyway. I would argue.
right,
Like,
right, and that's what I'm gonna say. If
I
like
think
it might come down to their head-to-head over Alabama, but a lot of people are saying these past couple of weeks it's kind of been manifesting that way, and a lot of people would take Alabama over Texas, even though Texas has the head-to-head. So my question to you guys is, if you're the committee, do you look at that with a lot more on it than just how recently they've been playing? Because I think recently Alabama's been playing a lot better than Texas
I
has.
I
think
think
I
if
think out of the 8 teams, those are easily the bottom two. Frankly,
Really.
yeah.
personally, I think if Texas does not win in a largely decisive manner, if it's not by 3 or more scores, they're not making the playoffs. They have to win by at least 21. I would argue 28. They have to make it. They have to make it decisive. I think 21's the benchmark for them, where that could probably bring them into the playoffs if they win by 21. But if they squeak out a win by like 7 or 3, if it's a one-score game, it's completely
Yeah.
at that point, it's I would put Ohio State, Oregon, even them. What will be interesting, just to flex real quick, is Florida State because obviously down their star quarterback and Jordan Travis, but I mean they still look good. Um, the question is, are they a lock? And I don't think they are.
No, they're
They
definitely
were a
not.
lock.
Especially if they
They were a lock.
lose their conference
Yeah,
championship. I very
yeah,
much doubt that they're a
because
lock.
So with Florida State, there's questioned if they win the conference, if they win the ACC, they would be 13-0 undefeated and win your conference too, which basically guarantees you a lock. But in this case, for Florida State, is that enough to get them in with the backup quarterback? Because Ohio State got in 9 years ago with their third string. So would you take a 13-0 ACC winner Florida State to the playoffs?
Yeah,
I think
it's a,
you have to. 13 and
yeah.
0, ACC winner. All year they've looked like a top 5 team in the country. I think they deserve it based on resume.
Yeah.
Despite the hang up with the quarterback. I mean, that's all there is to it, really.
I mean, the thing is that Oregon, Washington is going to be a game, and those are two teams that I think both deserve it.
Well,
But
the winner
whichever
of that game is
team
getting
loses,
in. The winner of that game
yeah,
is
that's
in.
the thing, and
yeah,
the
I think
loser
that's
isn't. So I think that puts that puts Florida State in by default, essentially, unless they want to try to sneak Ohio State in there, which I don't think they're going to do. If Florida State wins, they're a lock. I think.
Yeah, honestly, if Florida State wins, they have to be luck because you can't deny them that at that point. And then Georgia obviously is getting in unless they lose their conference title game, which I don't think they will.
Yeah.
And then
So
you've got
with
Michigan
that-
getting in because they're going to win the Big Ten. And then
Yeah.
that leaves you with the Pac-12 champion.
Yeah.
So
basically.
with the Florida State and the SEC championship game, let's say Alabama wins.
Right.
A lot of people think 2 SEC teams can get in. Would you take a? I think Georgia would be 12-1
They'd be
if
12
they
and 1.
were.
Both teams would be 12 and 1.
Would you take a 12-1? And this would probably be the 4th spot, so the last spot. Would you take a 12-1 Georgia team over a 13-0 Florida State?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if
I'm
you're
thinking that.
trying to create the best product, then that's the best product. Because quarterbackless Florida State doesn't hold a candle to any of these other teams, even though they may deserve to make the playoff.
Yeah. I mean, with Jordan Travis, if they had Jordan Travis, I think then you put them in the number 1 slot. But
If
number
they
2,
had Jordan Travis, I think they go toe-to-toe with anybody in the country.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
But they don't. So that's
They're
the
not in
reality
that
of the
position.
situation. You can't really ignore that.
And I think when you look at, especially when, Drew, when you were talking about Ohio State and how they look like a top 3 team or
I think
whatever
they
in
are
the
a top
country.
3 team.
So, who would you put if you think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you think Georgia's going to win on Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
So if you put Georgia, Michigan, and Florida State in, what about Ohio State? Do they jump
No.
Texas and Oregon or Washington?
If Florida State loses, I believe it should be Georgia, Michigan, Pac-12 champion, Ohio State. I think if Florida State wins, I don't see an avenue for Ohio State getting it.
What about Big 12 winner Texas? You would
Nope.
take Ohio State over a Big
No.
12
Yep,
winner Texas? You would?
absolutely.
Real?
Yeah.
A team that didn't even play in their conference title game
Yep.
over a team that won the Big
Because
12?
they did play in their conference
Because
title
the
game.
Big 12
Because
ridiculously.
they did play in their conference title game. Because the conference title game in the Big Ten every year is the game.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about the actual Big Ten championship because it's not
Well, I
real.
think the committee does.
They shouldn't. They
That's
should
what
be.
matters.
They should
Ohio
be able to
State-
look beyond the fact that the divisions are messed up and that Ohio State and Michigan have to play each other before the Big Ten conference championship.
Right, and I agree, but I think the issue here is that there's been a precedent over the last 9 years or whatever where you kind of got to make not usually you have to make and win your conference to get
The
in.
precedent is.
Except
yes,
that's not even true because Ohio State and Michigan both made it last year.
That's true.
I said usually because that's USC lost
What's
in the Pac-12 championship game. So, and that's also what happened with Ohio State the first year. I think TCU they were picked over TCU, who held the 4th spot. But in this scenario, I don't think you have that though, because the 4th seed right now is Washington, and Washington's in regardless if they win. If Washington wins, they're in. But if they lose, you're going to send Oregon. So now you've got all these teams. 7 out of the 8 are playing in the title game.
Mm-hmm.
So the one, I don't know if you can put them over a team that goes 12-1 and wins their conference.
I can.
You
I can
can.
absolutely can because if you look at it, you have to think about it like this. The Oklahoma State is in the championship 19th ranked. Iowa in the championship 18th ranked. Those two championships are frankly non-factors, essentially. As long as Texas handles business. If Texas doesn't handle business, then it's something to talk about. But frankly, those two aren't championships. The championships have already been decided, or the championship game was last week with the Michigan-Ohio State.
Yeah.
And does that mean that Ohio State still gets in? I'm not sure. I still think that if you had to ask me right now, my top 4 is what AP has would have as the top four, which is Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State. And if Florida State puts on a show in the ACC title, I could consider them bumping them up to 3, and then having the winner of the Pac-12. If that game's really close and it doesn't look like the best product, then have one of those teams at the 4 instead of the 3.
So my question is to both of you for tonight. Let's talk about the rankings that are going to come out in just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are saying that, and of course Ohio State will probably drop. We don't know how many spots they will, but assuming they're going to drop probably because they did lose to Michigan. So my question to both of you is, there's been a lot of speculation that Florida State is going to be left out of that top 4. For now. Until
I mean,
I
it's
think-
an unfortunate reality, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a mistake personally to leave them out of the top 4, but I could very well see it happening. Not because I agree with it, but because of the quarterback issue, which I think they're still good enough as a team with Keon Coleman and the rest of that offense, and their defense has been really solid. I think it's enough where you still put them even in the quarterback question. It's not like they're in a terrible quarterback situation. Their backup's decent. You're not running it's not like you're trotting out some guy who was never supposed to play in or start in a D1. He was a D1 starter before. He's shown he can win football games. He's shown has what it takes, maybe not to the level of what Jordan Travis has shown, that he is, a top 5 a Heisman candidate / potential winner, which I still think he has an argument for. But I think it could still be enough to maybe surprise some people, and I think having them out of the top 4 would be interesting, and I just think it's not the right move. I think
So there's been
anything. I move one of the Pac-12 teams like Washington or Oregon. I mean, I personally think Oregon's better than Washington. Washington has had some scary close games with non-rivals like Arizona State. I think they won by a touchdown or maybe even the only 3 points, and then they had some other close games with like Wazoo State. Wazoo is like interesting because sure that's a rival, but you should really be handling them when you have mediocre teams like Arizona State handling business against Washington State. You should be handling them despite being rivals, and that's why I think Oregon's stronger. So I could very well see a world where there's no Pac-12s in this playoff if something really wonky happens.
and we lost them.
Okay.
Um,
So the stream's a little messed up here because we lost him, but let me
so
keep talking, Jeff. You can keep going. Let me fix
So
this.
what I wanted to bring up is before Morgan cut out, and his point about Oregon is probably why they're favored by so much. There he is.
That was
again.
Here we go. Okay.
My point about, going off of what Morgan just said, and it probably, Morgan, I was telling Drew, off of your point, that's probably why Oregon's favored by 9.5. But the other issue I have about the Florida State thing is that a lot of people have said they've kind of had a bad resume and they haven't really beat good teams. And I can't really remember a somewhat of a decent team Florida State has beat. I mean, can you throw Duke and LSU in it? You'll certainly throw LSU in there, but can you even use Duke as a really credible win?
The rest of
Duke, I
Florida
believe,
State.
yeah. I mean, Duke has been. They've shown to be a pretty tough beat all season. Like, they're not a walkover team.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some, where you can argue that too. I mean, LSU's easily the best team they've faced.
Well, it's about to be.
They faced
Louisville.
NC State, who was ranked at the time. Or no, that was last year. Sorry, 2 years ago. Yeah, there's just really. I mean, there's some decent team. I see the difference is I think there's some decent teams in here. No like standouts.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like, no, there's some, solid teams who have shown some solid fight,
Yeah.
and the thing is they've handled business, I think, for the most part, consistently against those teams.
So when looking at their schedule right now, Florida State has only beaten 2 ranked teams. They beat number 5 LSU in the season opener by 21, and then they beat number 16 Duke 38-20. So that's 2 blowout wins against ranked opponents, but only 2 ranked opponents. And this is where, a couple weeks ago, ESPN, they went on about how Oregon kind of had a wacky resume as well. They went off on a couple of other teams that kind of missed their window to make the playoffs. But I don't know if they can really, because they're going to have to use those 2 wins, right? Because that's kind of the only wins you have. I mean, who else could? I don't think I'm seeing anybody else on their schedule
Yeah.
that is a really quality win. And I mean, obviously, some people might want an outsider like a Oregon or somebody, maybe even Alabama to jump in this early
Huh.
based on how well Alabama's been playing. But I mean, a lot of
Well,
these other beaten good teams, and I don't think Florida State has really beaten anybody good. They've beaten LSU, and LSU's
here's the
kind of
thing.
struggled.
Here's the thing. What I'm seeing happening is I'm thinking Louisville probably beats them
I agree. I don't have a lot of confidence that Florida
because
State's going
Yeah,
Louisville are not slouches. They are ranked number 10 right now in the AP
yeah,
poll.
they're scary.
I mean, they're not, or sorry, the CFP rankings, they're ranked number 10. And they are not to be taken lightly, if you ask me. So I think a Jordan Travis-less FSU is going to lose to Louisville. And then that takes out FSU. And then you've got
Yeah,
and then you've got a spot for whoever, honestly.
And that's where it gets interesting.
If that
'cause-
Oregon-Washington game is close,
Yeah.
possibly both. Could be both, depending
Right,
on
if it's a
whatever
good game,
whatever chaos
Oregon would
happens.
have to win. Oregon would have to win because I think 2
No,
losses,
yeah,
you're done.
especially 2 losses to Washington.
Yes, right. Yeah, I don't think
That's
you
not
can put
happening.
I mean, the
So
only other
what would Washington need to do to lose and to still get in? Maybe squeeze into that 4th spot.
Okay, so
So-
getting out here, so we've got 8 teams we think are in contention. So I think
Yeah.
it would have to be Georgia takes their conference championship.
Yep.
Michigan obviously wins the Big Ten. Washington wins, and then wait, you're saying Washington loses, and then Oregon is Pac-12 champion. So then right now you're looking at Georgia, Michigan, Oregon. So then I would think Texas would have to lose, FSU would have to lose. Both reasonable things to happen, I think. And
So
then
with that being
2
said,
loss,
and
Bama's not getting in, and then it's just between Ohio State and Oregon, and then it's up to the committee.
so
I still
I
think-
put this into the all-state predictor. They've went with Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Oregon 3, Ohio State 4, and Washington 5. Would you be okay if this is how it turns out?
That's
Would you
assuming
be okay?
Washington wins the Pac-12, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so they've.
that's
okay,
totally
yeah.
reasonable.
All right, so
I-
they've come out with the top 25. There isn't much to see. They've got Oklahoma State back up at 18.
Oh, they
And
just
Iowa-
they just released it?
Yeah, they're on now. So Oklahoma State's up 2 spots. Iowa's up 1. Those are 2 teams playing on Saturday. Iowa in the Big Ten and Oklahoma State in the Big 12. I won't go over every team, just the kind of the notable teams that are playing on Saturday. And Iowa only jumping 1. Oklahoma State, of course, jumping 2 after the overtime win, double overtime.
Yeah.
And
there's
they've dropped Louisville 4 spots down to 14. Louisville is playing in the ACC title game. This is Florida State's opponent. The
I want to see if they
Heisman
drop Florida.
candidate Jaden Daniels'
Close.
LSU was up to 13. And then you've got Oklahoma at 12 and Ole Miss
Okay.
at 11.
Okay. Ole Miss at 11. That's interesting.
It's weird. This is very strange. I don't see a reason to drop Louisville by how many spots? 4?
Well, they did lose to Kentucky.
Yeah.
That's fair, I guess, but I mean Kentucky's been frisky these past few years.
Yes.
They've been a little scary for a lot of teams. I mean,
the top 10, Penn State is up 1 spot from last week back into the top 10. They
That's
stay.
fair.
They stand at 10-2.
yeah.
And they would jump Ole Miss for that top 10 spot.
Where's
Which is
Mizzou at?
fair.
At number 9, Missouri. They
Okay.
stay at
Okay.
9.
Honestly, that's fair because they're not a
Yeah.
playoff team, and there's 8 teams really alive still, so
Yeah.
I can't really complain about
Lost
that.
It's
Missouri.
unfortunate because, like, they're good, but they're
Yeah.
Missouri with 2 losses, same record as Penn State.
Honestly, I think
they're
Missouri
they're just better than Penn
at
State, though.
at a neutral site can go toe to toe with some of these top 8 teams. I think
Wow.
they lose to like the big dogs, but like
I
Texas
think
and
top.
Oregon, I think they could go toe to toe with.
I was gonna say I think top
8
5
is
they lose to.
What'd you say?
I was saying top 5. I think they lose to.
Probably.
Maybe even top 6.
Probably. Well, not
But
Florida
at a
State
new-
at this point, but
yeah. But
that's
I
that's
mean,
a given.
I want to see
8
where they put Florida State.
Alabama, 7 is Texas. So those teams stay, which is, I'm sure, going to make a lot of people happy that they've
Okay.
got a 8 over
Quick,
Texas.
real
and
quick prediction before you say this. My prediction: I think they drop Florida State and then they move Ohio State to the 4, and then it's 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, 3
Pac-12.
Washington, 4 Ohio State. I think that's a choice.
Well, that's only
that
if
they can
Oregon loses, right?
Yeah.
This is interesting because now we've got Texas and Alabama at that 7 and 8 respectively, and so now we know that Ohio State is going to be over them, which I think is going to cause a lot of controversy this week.
Yeah.
I think that's fair, though. I think that's completely fair because I think
drastically,
Ohio
but-
State is a better team than both those teams.
Yeah.
Players.
I'm
It's
surprised.
certainly better than Texas. I think Texas is fraudulent, honestly.
I think Texas is good. I just don't think
They're not playoff good.
They're not playoff good. They're not playoff good. They're New Year's 6 good. I don't think they're playoff good.
Yeah, they'll be in New Year's 6. I mean, I think that's
Is
clear.
Alabama playoff good?
Yeah.
Yeah. As much as I
Yeah,
hate
they'll
it, they are. I don't like how they played against Auburn. A 5-loss Auburn team that game cannot be that close. I understand it's the Iron Bowl. It's the second best
It
rivalry
doesn't.
in college football, but it just cannot be that close. And Ohio State came in at 6 here.
All right, so we got Ohio State at 6. They dropped 4 spots to the 6th spot.
That's
question is-
brutal.
I don't agree with that.
That's going to put a lot of.
The question is Alabama in this top 6? I
No,
don't
they're
think
in-
so,
there's-
right? Oh wait, no, they're already ranked. Sorry, yeah.
No,
Yeah, they're
Alabama's at 8.
Yeah. So I didn't have the list in front
And
of
this
me.
is number 5 is going to be interesting here.
Yeah, I want
Yeah.
to see if this is Florida
So-
State.
So do I. This is my prediction.
Florida State is going to ruffle some feathers.
Oh, Oregon.
Wow.
Okay.
So Florida State 4. So they're just gonna keep the same top 4, unless
Yeah.
they move Michigan up to the 1, which would be funny.
Well, honestly, with how Georgia played against Georgia Tech, I could see it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But I don't think
I
they'll
think
do it.
totally fair Oregon over Ohio State.
Hmm?
I think it's fair to put Oregon over Ohio State. And
I think that's fair.
That's reasonable.
I don't agree with the Florida State over both those teams.
I Florida State probably. And with the way they beat Florida on Saturday, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Oregon
Yeah, there you
sits
go.
1 spot playoff.
Florida State at 4.
All right, and then the top 3 will probably stay the same. Florida State
Yeah.
12 and 0.
This is probably all the same.
Is a little bit kind of crazy in my opinion for FSU.
I just don't like this Florida State take from them. It's saying that, oh well, they haven't given us a reason to drop them, but they kind of
That's
have.
fair.
Losing your
That's
quarterback
fair.
is
But here's the thing: can you really punish a team for an injury until it's shown that it makes them a worse team?
yes, because I think it's visibly shown that they are a worse team without him.
Washington
It's
comes
not
in at
like
3.
Yeah,
a large
that's fair.
significance that I thought it possibly could be, but it's to an amount where I remove them from top 4
Yeah. No, I get that.
because, like, record-wise, you can't say that.
I think Michigan should be. Oh, Michigan too. Interesting.
Wow.
So then Georgia won. They really do not want to take Georgia out of that one spot.
Yeah, they're very.
It was the first week I think they did.
Which
Georgia goes to 1.
no, Georgia's been one for like 3 years straight now.
Yeah.
They took them. Georgia was number 2 when they first released this, though.
The CFP ranking or the AP?
Yeah, this is CFP
Okay.
rankings.
Yeah, that's.
So then
I
the
mean, that's a
top,
different beast.
I'm kind of surprised that Oregon did not jump Florida State. I thought for sure they would have made this Pac-12 title game on Friday. 3-4, 3 versus 4. So
Yeah.
Washington 3 versus Oregon 4.
I think
I'm a little bit shocked that Michigan isn't 1.
Same.
I am too.
I
I
think
feel
they
like they've
probably-
done literally everything needed to be number one.
They beat their fraud allegations. They beat their. Well, they were only winning because they're cheating, which was stupid. They beat those allegations. They've done everything a football team should this season. They've handled every opponent they needed to handily. There was a few games where it started off rough, but they rebounded
They have not
quickly in
played.
those
They
games.
haven't played a close game except for Ohio State all year.
Yeah, there's no reason for me to believe that team doesn't beat Georgia. Like,
I'm a little bit surprised Ohio State is over Texas and Alabama. I think
not.
I would
I'm
drop
not.
Ohio State.
I
Not
think
at
Ohio
all.
State
I think
handily
Alabama-
beats both of those teams.
I disagree. I think Alabama floors Ohio
I
State.
so disagree with
I-
you there.
I don't
That is not
Oh,
right.
ridiculous.
They absolutely
You cannot tell
do
me a
not.
team with Marvin Harrison is getting floored by a team with Jalen and the second best defense. Like,
It's just
There's
honestly, it's the
nothing-
quarterback holding them back. Jalen Milroe is the most inconsistent quarterback in the game right now. So
and even when he's on, it's not like he's
well,
not.
I want to go after that absolutely fraudulent win against Auburn.
Oh my
Like
god,
4th and 31.
30.
How do you
And then you
get
get a
beat in the corner of the end zone on 4th and 31? That's
Rush
insanity.
2 guys.
That's insanity. They
Did
had
you guys see, like,
9
the
guys
safety-
covering the field.
There's a guy that had a chance to run over there and
he
like knock it
didn't
away.
do
and he's
it.
kind
I know. On a bomb too. It wasn't like a short throw.
Here's the issue.
Yeah, you have
looking
a
at
bomb,
like
and you can. Every other person can literally abandon their guy, and be like, "It's going to the corner."
Yeah.
You just need to get one.
I
person
have,
to-
I'm looking at the 6 right now. I have such an issue with Florida State being over Oregon.
So do I.
I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Well, at this point, I have an issue with them.
Even
It's a resume thing at this point because I don't think they beat Ohio State either.
No, they don't.
I don't think
Who?
they beat Ohio State. I
No,
don't think
no,
they beat
they don't beat
Texas. I
Ohio
don't think they
State,
beat
they don't
Alabama.
beat
I don't think they
Alabama,
beat
they don't
Missouri.
beat
I don't think
Texas.
they beat Penn State right now. Just because
Here,
they
I
don't
can
have a
go through this.
quarterback.
I think
but
it's
Florida State
arguable
hasn't
they
been
lose
very
to
good
Ole
all
Miss.
year. So I don't know why they hold this 4 spot.
No, I think it's arguable they lose to Ole Miss too, and possibly get upset by Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, I think kind of Arizona is the cutoff where I think they start beating teams because they're just better. Like,
Yeah.
it's like LSU, you could see that happening too. Like, I'd slot them in at I honestly slot them in at like the 13 slot here.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, what they're doing is they're just getting their due because they've been so good all season.
I know, and I respect them for it, and I get it. And now I can actually talk trash about about Florida State because I'm not afraid my roommate's gonna kill me. I just don't think they're that good right now where they're a top 4 team. I get they're getting their dues, and I get they've been so good all season, but realistically, you didn't handle Florida, who's been not good in the most, in the greatest matter. I mean, 24-15, winning by 9, when that's a team you realistically, an unranked team, you should be beating them. I don't care if it's a rivalry, you should be beating that team by at least two scores, like 14, I
Well,
think.
I think for rivalry games you have to be given
I know, I'm giving them that
a
thought.
little bit of leeway because think Georgia
I'm
Tech,
giving them
Georgia,
that.
like all that stuff.
I'm giving them that leeway, and I'm not giving, I'm giving Alabama that leeway too. And I still think both those teams, especially Alabama, Alabama should have killed
I'm
Auburn.
shocked Alabama at 8. I'm shocked they didn't move.
Yeah,
Not
no,
even a spot.
What have they
I,
done?
I, I have.
What have they done to deserve to move up?
Here's the thing. It's not what's Alabama's done. It's what the other teams haven't done. Ohio State. I'm sorry, like it or not, you got to beat Michigan. Okay, you just have to. So I have such an issue
no, you got to
with
be
Florida
what
State
we
being
all
in
agree
two
is the
ranked
best
teams
team in
the
the
entire
country.
year and squeaking by with these against unranked opponents over a team like Oregon who barely lost to Washington, should probably be undefeated. And then somebody like Alabama, who's completely played so much better than they have at the start and middle of the year. And then somebody like Texas. Oh, and you're telling me Ohio State's a better team than Texas and Alabama? I think that's an incredible mistake. And it could also hinder, because, I mean, these are the second to last rankings, right? So it could also hinder Texas and Alabama's chances that Ohio State's at 6 now. I think you have to take them completely out of the equation here because the fact of the matter is you're not playing a conference championship game this week, and like there's no way you're going to play like by the time these final rankings come out, you haven't played a game in 2 weeks.
I mean, that's true, but there's no set. You have to look at it that in the sense that there's no set like algorithm or like function
Yeah,
to
there is.
get. Well, there's like an algorithm, but there's at the end of the day, it's a decision by a committee, right? And they have the final say. And last year they did it. They put Ohio State in. They didn't play their conference championship. They got blown out by Michigan. And yet here we
Right,
are.
but that's because it wasn't so close like this is.
But what
Ohio
I'm
State
saying
got
is
in
that
because
this Ohio State team, is based on the eye test, based on resume, as good, if not better, than Texas and Alabama right now. And I
That's
think
fair.
you can't just say like, well, they didn't play their conference championship game because I don't think that matters when it's this tier of team, this caliber of team.
I think that in any other year, it wouldn't like last year. But the problem is, I think so many of these teams, like we're going off of one loss teams, right? Because the
Right.
undefeated teams don't really matter in this situation. The one loss teams, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State. I don't think this year, with the amount of one loss teams that there are with who have a chance to make it, because there's a chance Oregon, Alabama, and Texas all make the playoffs. But I just don't think. Oh, I think you have to just take Ohio State completely out of this because
Why?
all
I
three
just
of
don't
those teams
understand
are
why.
playing.
Because think about this: they go in to this Ohio State game, the Ohio State Michigan game. They're ranked 2 and 3 all year. They've been considered. This is like the collision course, and they go in and they lose a 1-score game. I don't think anything in that has indicated to me, or should have indicated to anybody, that Ohio State is not in the same tier as these no loss teams.
And they went into
I'm
Ann
not
Arbor too.
saying
This
they're
wasn't
not
a home
playing.
loss. This was a loss in Ann Arbor, which is
Yeah,
which was it was an
Yeah, I
insane
understand.
environment.
I get it. I get it. But the issue I have with this is that I'm not saying they're not as good as some of these other teams or they're not in the same tier. I'm saying for playoff wise, they're not going to play a game in like 2 weeks when they reveal these.
so
I think it's Sun something. These rankings.
they don't play the
So
CFP
you have,
until January 1st. No team has
no,
played
I meant
games
the
in weeks.
rank. The final rankings come out Sunday. If you're on the committee and you're looking at this, you're going to say, "Oh, okay, so these teams have played what, like a day or whatever yesterday. Ohio State's not going to play in a while, so I don't think you can
Yeah,
take that
it
because
doesn't.
all of these
It's
other
a
teams,
1 week difference.
out of the 7 out of the 8 teams that we've been talking about have would have played a conference title game. And that means so much more than Ohio State just sitting on your ass on the couch watching these games because you can't beat Michigan. I think if they can't beat Michigan, Their window, I think it's done.
I don't think anybody in the
this
country
year,
can beat Michigan. Why is
Michigan's
them
the
not
best team
beating
in the country.
Michigan the criteria here? I don't think Georgia can beat
You-
Michigan. I don't think Florida State can beat Michigan. I don't think Oregon or Washington can beat Michigan. I don't think Alabama can beat Michigan. I don't think Texas can beat Michigan. So how is it different?
You don't think Georgia can beat Michigan?
Who? Oregon?
You don't think Georgia can beat Michigan?
I think they could play with Michigan, but I think Michigan is better.
We all agreed that Michigan was the best team like 10 minutes ago. People can.
I think
Okay,
Ohio
early in
State,
their season,
Michigan, and
oh,
Georgia
Michigan should
are
be
the
number one.
three big dogs in college football this season, and it's them three only.
With the
Florida
way
State
this
was in the
works,
conversation
you
until
can't lose to a
Georgia Travis
team
went
like
down.
Michigan, and Ohio State. This has been a problem for them.
You can't
losing
lose to
I
the
think,
best
three
team in the
straight-
country. That's
Michigan's
the
not the
standard?
best team in
Who is?
Georgia right now.
No,
Georgia
Michigan
is number
so
one.
much better than Georgia right now.
You literally
You
said
can't go
Michigan
in-
should be one earlier.
You just said you're surprised
Georgia
Michigan's not one.
right now. Right, I did. But
So
right
you're going
now,
back on your
Georgia is
words.
number. Hold on. Right now, Georgia's number one. I said before Michigan should be number one, but as of right now, Georgia's number one. With Ohio State, you can't lose to somebody like Michigan. You can't have the luxury
Somebody
to
like
play a team like
Michigan,
that. Lose
At
look at
worst,
that.
they're the second
All
best
these
team
other
in the
teams, they don't
country.
get the opportunity to play a top team. Granted, Alabama will. So I think if they win, they have to be in. But
They do
I
get
have-
the
I have an
opportunity
issue
to
with
play
them
a
being-
top team. They don't schedule it. That is not a great argument. You like
for Alabama,
Alabama? What is Alabama?
I said Alabama.
Yeah,
Alabama has done
Alabama
nothing.
has to play Georgia.
right, and they're gonna lose. And they played Texas
And lost.
and lost. The two real teams that they have played and will play are going to be their two losses. Who else have they played that's put up any kind of...
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss?
Ole Miss is like number 11, right? So why is that?
That's not a real team either. Ole Miss
Top
is
15 team. They're almost top 10 doesn't count.
I mean, it's a good win, but we're not talking about top 10 in the rankings. We're talking about legitimate college football playoff contenders.
How many times do you get to play a college football playoff?
I understand that's not a great argument, but the only conference where that's really happening is the Pac-12 because of Oregon and Washington. But I just don't see the quality in Alabama that a lot of other people do.
I just have a problem with Ohio State losing such a big game and being over teams that won. And I'm really glad because I would have had a stroke if Oregon was below Ohio State. I would have probably burnt the place down.
Why?
But
why?
Because it's insane.
How?
No,
It's the same situation. It's the exact same situation.
There are so many teams that I would take over Ohio State. This team had a slow start to the year. They beat down on these bad teams.
Ohio State and Oregon are in the exact same situation right now. Both of them, their one loss has come to a team ranked ahead of them in the CFP rankings.
Ohio State didn't have to play Utah. They didn't have to play Oregon
They played
State.
Penn State.
Washington, Penn State. If you look at it,
so now number 10 team. The number 10 team doesn't count.
you're
who's number 10?
losing
Penn
your
State.
argument, Jeff.
Hold on, let me finish. Penn State. If you have to look at it historically, Penn State has never been able to win a big game. So you have to like hold these top like 12 teams, like 12 to 10. They have to hold some ground here because obviously some teams beating some teams are more impressive regardless of their standing. But Ohio State has beaten down on the Big Ten, which is just historically bad football, generationally bad ball.
Historically bad.
The Big Ten is awful. You look at the Power 5 conference, the Big Ten has two teams every year. Let's be honest. The Big Ten has two teams.
But to be fair, like what conference really
Those two
doesn't?
teams are always generally two of the best teams in football. The rest of the teams there's some stinkers, but there's a lot of mediocre to pretty solid.
Okay, here's the thing. I don't like the they didn't play anybody argument because I mean, yeah, their strength of schedule is not like a Pac-12 this year, but these mid-level Big Ten teams are not bad teams.
Yeah, no. And they're
not.
handled.
It's
They handled
Division
them.
I Big Ten football. It's not
Bad.
bad football. It's not bad football.
Iowa is going to the Big Ten championship game, and they've.
It's
I
not.
think
That's
they-
just bullshit.
You know what?
7-7.
Iowa right now, I think Iowa blows a lot of these lower ranked teams out of the water. Iowa absolutely smacks Clemson right now. Guarantee it.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
because they don't play
Oh.
air it out football,
Come
they play
on.
defensive football, doesn't mean they're a bad team.
Has Iowa scored over 20 points a game this season?
No, they haven't. It's not
Then there's
great.
no
It's
reason
not
to beat
great
some of
for them.
these teams.
I think they
Iowa
beat
is
Clemson.
in dog
Okay,
walk.
right now, I think Iowa beats NC State. I think they beat Tennessee. I think they beat Tulane. I think they beat Clemson, Liberty, and Kansas State. Yeah.
That's absurd.
That is not
That is-
absurd. They won their division in the Big Ten.
No, how hard is that with their division? How
It's
hard is
Big
it?
Ten football.
Oh yeah, tell me the combined records of the teams in Iowa.
This is
I-
so
Okay.
insane, bro. That's the most
Big
ridiculous argument I've ever heard.
It's not, because the
Yeah,
fact
it
of the
is.
matter is,
Yeah, it
Big
is.
I
Ten
need
is,
to literally just.
Big Ten is terrible football. It's always been bad.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Teams that are ranked, teams that put up
Actually,
points, and teams that
I'm
are
just to
actually
point out,
good.
Iowa
historically.
scored 22 points against Rutgers
Okay, yeah, there you go. How about
That
that?
was their season high,
and
probably.
41 against Western Michigan, and
That doesn't count.
yeah, I know, and 20 against Purdue, and 26 against Michigan State,
Look,
and
okay.
20 against Iowa
was
State,
last
and
year.
24 against Utah State.
And anyways,
just saying it
why
in
do you
general.
They
think
played
Iowa
Iowa State. They've played, well, Michigan State's terrible this year, so that doesn't really mean anything. Wisconsin, never an easy win. Northwestern was a decent team this year. I mean, like, it's not like they're playing bums. It's Big
It's just
Ten
they're-
football.
exactly what they're playing? They're playing these bum ass programs.
No,
with
they're
all due
not.
respect.
No, they're not.
And let me ask you this.
Oh
Why
my
do you
gosh.
think I was in these rankings?
Because they're a good team.
Because
it's
they're
not
10-2.
No, it's not, because their AD is on the committee.
Oh my gosh. How can
because
you be
they're
at the
10-2,
top of a division
idiot.
in the Big Ten and not be ranked? That's my
Who they
question.
played? That's my point. There's no way this team should
No
be
big deal.
ranked. They
Okay, so
should be
the
like
only
20.
wins that matter are like against the top 8
Okay,
teams
so
in the
then
country.
Liberty doesn't deserve
Is that
to
what
be
that
ranked
means?
either.
Who has
Liberty
Liberty
doesn't
played?
deserve
Who
to
has
be
Liberty played? Who has Kansas State played? Nobody. So why are they ranked? That's the argument. That's so dumb.
It's different. With
It's
the Big
not.
but you're,
It's not
Ten is-
different.
Hold on, because you're using Iowa to say that the Big Ten is good football. Iowa is not good football. The Big Ten has two good teams every year, and you can't say, "Oh, Ohio State beating Penn State and Notre Dame."
Right
You-
now,
you can't
right
take those
now,
wins.
If you take
They're
like Tulane or Liberty and put them in the Big Ten West, which is Iowa's division, they go and they're at the bottom of that because it's a different
Iowa-
tier of football. It's
Iowa
different.
would lose to those
It's
teams.
different.
No, they,
No, they would
wouldn't.
not. They beat those teams.
Just
No.
because they don't score a lot doesn't. They just play different football.
Okay,
I don't
so
like watching
No,
Big
okay.
Ten
I don't think they're the
football.
best team. I think the lack of offense is certainly very concerning.
Oh, yeah.
But
It's an
that
issue.
doesn't
I mean,
mean they're a bad team.
Morgan, let me ask you this: if they don't score a lot of points, what's the objective of football?
To
win a
win.
game.
To win.
How do you win a game? How do you win a game?
You
How do
score
you win a game?
Scoring
more points than the other
Yeah,
than
more
your opponent.
points than the other
And you know how
team.
many
That's
games
what
this
I
year?
said.
Do you know how many games this year Iowa has scored more points than their opponent? 10 of them.
10.
10 of them.
Against the Big Ten West or what?
Oh
the Big
my
Ten West.
gosh. Yeah, it's the Big Ten West.
Big Ten West.
A win is a
This-
win. A win is a win.
Not though, because these teams suck.
That's what you
How
were
many-
arguing
you have to look
earlier.
at it historically. How many times have we seen Penn State put into the top 4 and they just go and blow it every year? Because why? Because they have
They
to.
weren't
how
in
many-
the top 4 this year.
No, like back in like a 5 years back or whatever. Michigan State, Penn State have all been Big Ten teams. Even I think Wisconsin one year maybe has been
Melvin Gordon
in
year, yeah.
these playoff rankings.
Yeah, but that was
And
their
why
coach.
have they not made it? Every year. Why? Because they've ran into Michigan and Ohio State and completely have been
That's
dominated.
two of like the 5 best programs in college football history, dude.
That's exactly, and that's why the Big Ten is not good, because you have to think.
What
now
does
you're
that mean?
admitting that. Now you're
Of
admitting that
course-
Ohio State is one of the top 5 programs.
I don't think they are. That's a different story.
Whoa. Who would you say is ahead
There's
of them?
Alabama, of course.
Yeah.
Yale.
What? No, shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
I think
That was really funny. That was really
USC,
admit it.
Alabama, and
Did you say USC?
yeah, USC has a lot of wins.
Get out of here.
USC's won the Rose Bowl like 38 times or something.
Okay.
No, that's not actually true.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I don't know.
firstly,
I think
that's not true. Secondly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, when you look at historically, the Big Ten's been 2 teams.
And those
So,
are 2 of the best teams in football. That's what we're saying, is that Ohio State is one of the
yeah, but if
best
all
teams.
these other teams were good, you'd think they'd beat them at least once, and that hasn't happened. Every year, the Big Ten.
It's because Ohio State and Michigan are so far ahead of every other team. It's the same thing with Bama.
It's possible for teams to be good and other teams to be great.
Yeah.
Like,
It's the same thing with Bama and Georgia.
Here's the
Bama
problem.
and Georgia are so far ahead of the rest of the SEC, and they have been for years now. Was it always like that? No. But
well, okay, years now is there's a bit of a cycle in the SEC, but
yeah. But it's you can still argue that Alabama and Georgia over the past 5 or so years have been, just far above for the most part.
Here's the problem, though.
yeah, just historically, I mean, in the SEC it's different
Yeah,
because it's
I mean,
not the
it's
same
different.
teams
It's
every year.
different.
Because like you had Florida,
Well, the SEC
you
is the
had
better. The SEC is the best football conference.
like you get
is the thing.
LSU will come around every once in a while
Yeah.
and be a playoff team. I mean, it's different.
Yeah,
but
it's not.
I get what you're saying. It's like usually a conference will have 1 or 2 teams that kind of dominate.
Yeah. What I'll say is yearly there'll be 1 or 2 teams that dominate a conference for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
For the Pac-12 this year, it was Oregon and Washington. For the Big Ten, it was Ohio State and Michigan again. For the SEC, it was Georgia and I guess Bama, even though Bama still looked a little shaky. For the Big 12, I guess you could argue it was Texas and Oklahoma State, even though, Oklahoma State isn't great, but still, there's a cycle of 2 to 3 teams usually just dominate the conference yearly.
Right.
And it just switches to the year for some conferences.
I don't we can compare resumes and stuff, and obviously that's something they'll take into account, obviously, when this is all said and done, and when they're making these picks. But I think with right now where we stand, I've got a little bit of a problem with Texas and Alabama not moving up at least 1 spot.
Why
I'm
would
not saying-
Alabama move up is my question.
Yeah.
Why?
I've been asking that. What have they done?
Because I think it's been momentum for Alabama. I
They
think
barely beat Auburn.
What?
Let me pull them up really quickly.
They haven't played anybody.
Let's see here. All right, so Alabama has lost the second week.
Yeah, they lost to Texas.
10 straight wins. They beat ranked Tennessee and LSU back-to-back. They beat Ole Miss, who's number 15 as well.
Tennessee shouldn't be ranked, by the way.
Yeah, Tennessee, that's a fraudulent ranking. That's stupid.
So
It beat A&M by 6.
Yep.
Kentucky,
Yeah.
they handled.
South Florida.
Chattanooga,
that
who
game.
cares? Auburn,
Yeah,
they
they
won
beat
by
Chattanooga.
3. Arkansas, they beat Arkansas by 3 points.
Yeah, you talk about momentum, but it's just in the win column. I mean,
yeah, but 10 straight wins obviously has to get you
one of
some-
those was barely beating South Florida.
Yeah, but see, you can't pick and choose your games here.
we're not
With
picking
barely-
and choosing. It's half the games.
I've
Yeah, but here's
literally
the
named
problem with
half
that.
the
Here's
games
the
that
problem
you're
with
talking
using
about.
South
And then
Florida. That's
the one game they've played against a top
Tennessee,
10 team right now,
14.
the one game they played against a top 10 ranked team, Texas, they lost.
Texas was number 11.
Yeah, but currently ranked top 10.
Oh, right, yeah. But I mean, but again, you could have also said that for Ole Miss before they lost their second game. So I think that, and I think what I'm looking at is way further than that. I think you have to look at the Tennessee and LSU back to back with 2 wins of 14 score wise. But because I mean, I think they've looked a lot better, obviously, since like the second week or the loss to
Well,
Texas,
duh.
Florida win. Um,
Well, duh. They were considered like just an outsider looking in. At least now they're in. I would agree they're still a top 8 team, but I think that's where they are. Is they're top 8, but that's about it. They're not, a top 4 guy. I think this is what's going to make the expanded playoff really interesting, and that's I think
yeah,
Ohio. Oh, I think it's a good idea because now you have Ohio State. Well, I think the conference Big Ten will get shuffled around a little bit maybe next year
Yeah,
with USC and UCLA. I think they might put Michigan and Ohio State in different regions.
I
I
think
think.
that game got like permanently locked or whatever though that they play each other every year still.
Oh, does
I
it?
think
Did it?
so.
oh,
Michigan and Ohio
Ohio.
State.
yeah, yeah.
I
And
mean,
then
I
I
still
mean,
think you could
it's
argue.
huge. They would never make them not play.
Yeah.
I mean, next year, I mean, I just want to say this about the conference stuff. The Big Ten specifically, a lot of people lamenting the loss of the Pac-12, and yeah, it's not. The Pac-12 has been great this year. Like, it's not a good thing, really. But if you look at that Big Ten schedule next year for these top teams, oh man, they have some of these guys running the gauntlet. Like, they've got Michigan, I'm pretty sure, playing Oregon, Washington, Ohio State, like,
USC to
it's
USC.
gonna get real. It's gonna get nasty, and these college football playoff rankings, especially with an expanded playoff coming, are about to get a lot messier because you're gonna get three lost teams out of the Big Ten that are gonna be worth a spot.
Well, and rightfully so. And I think you said it well, worth the spot. I think you have to, and this is obviously next year, but you're going to have to look at some of those teams that lose like 2 or 3 games and say, yeah, they're worth it because of look who they played. And it's probably going to be a dogfight. And I mean, when you look at it from a recruiting standpoint, these teams like Oregon and USC and Washington, they're going to get a lot better because they're going to be bringing in guys that are Big Ten recruits. Because obviously the Big Ten's a lot bigger than the Pac-12, like
Well,
conference-wise
I
and like
still think
historic.
region based recruiting is probably gonna be big, but
Yeah, that'll still be big, but
I
I'm
mean,
just
some of
talking
these
about.
teams are going to be
I
in
just think
travel.
Big Ten is more attractive than Pac-12, even though they're both
Yeah.
like top conferences.
I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is, some of these teams are going to be in real travel hell. I mean, you have teams that are going to be
Yeah.
having to.
But for football, I don't think it matters.
Yeah,
And
for
And that's what we're
football, I think
talking
it's
about right
less
now.
so.
Because you play once a week, like you have time to get there.
Yeah, I know. I still think it, but I mean, you have to remember that these are also, students. So
Huh.
like, it's
Huh.
still
Some of them are
I
like
both
graduate
students. But
transfers, like stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, but they still have to go to classes
Yeah,
and
yeah.
do stuff. So it's not like you can get them there 2 days before for the most part. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But it's gonna be interesting to see if that has any impact on how they schedule things in the future, just
Well,
for
I just
schedules,
think that
schedule wise.
that first year for USC and UCLA is going to be tough because they're going to have to
Yeah.
come out to the Midwest and like
Yeah.
the eastern part of the country during November and late October when the weather can get pretty nasty, and that's going to be a big adjustment because they're used to playing. I mean, yeah, you'll get Oregon and Washington games where it's like snowing and stuff like that, like
Yeah, I think
stuff
I'd
like
say
that.
they
But that's
more
much more frequent in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can count on it being like 30 degrees,
Yeah.
20 degrees in those November,
I know, of
late
course, eventually
October.
they'll adapt, but that's also going to throw a wrench in things, I think.
Yeah, it
I
should.
think Oregon and Washington will probably have a little bit more immediate success
Yeah.
in the Big Ten than somebody like a
Yeah.
USC. Is UCLA in there as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, then
Arizona, um, Arizona State, another Utah are going to the Big 12.
Utah's in the Big 12.
Um,
That's going to be interesting.
that's going to be an interesting one.
Colorado. So
Arizona could
Colorado
be.
is going to the Big 12 as well.
Oh yeah, that too. Arizona could be interesting. They could make a. I think Arizona in the Big 12 could be interesting next year, depending on how many people transfer into / away from there. Because they had a relatively successful season this year, I think that it could, bring them up as, a real two-pronged machine in terms of basketball and football, if we're just talking about football now. But it'll be interesting to see what the conferences shake up like next year. I mean, there's going to be some. I mean, Pac-12. It's not the strongest conference, but it was really good this year, and it still should be pretty solid next year. And I think the Big Ten is something is the biggest one that's gonna be impacted, obviously. But I think the Big 12, and I think just the playoffs are gonna be so interesting next year because you'll like both of you were saying, you're gonna have two lost teams potentially being in playoff
Not even
conversations.
potentially, because you will have two lost teams.
Yeah. Or
Because
two
the
or
way the
three.
Big Ten schedule is shaking out is, if you're like Washington and you're very good again, you're playing Michigan, you're playing probably Ohio State, you're playing Oregon as usual, you're playing like all these good teams that can give you a run for your money. You're gonna lose two games probably.
And let's not leave out the fact that some of these Big Ten teams, they could also rematch too in those bowl games leading up to the semifinals. And another thing is about the Pac-12 is that they like you talk about a send-off for a conference that's been really popular over like the last 15 years or so. Like Oregon, Washington, that's like the game of the year right here. Um, I think way bigger than Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, this decides a playoff berth
Yeah,
essentially. Um, so I mean, that's definitely something to look out for. Um, I mean, I think it'll be a great game. I think that pretty much we're gonna all have pretty good games on Saturday.
I
I
mean,
don't
yeah,
really, with the
that's what
exception
two.
of
Those are
uh,
two Heisman candidates with Nix and Penix
yeah,
going at it.
hmm
You have, I mean, that's huge implications because playoffs and the last, and who will be the last Pac-12 champion?
yeah, that too. And then you said Heisman too. Right now, I think it's Nix in front, followed by Daniels, and then Penix. So, I mean, just really quickly about the Heisman, who do we think's gonna win that?
At this point, I think it's between if Nix shows up, I think it's Nix. Um,
it's gonna be whoever plays better in the Pac-12 championship game
yeah,
and
because
Yeah,
Jayden Daniels.
unfortunately for him, he's out of the conversation because he won't get to really, I mean, prove himself and give himself another thing. It's gonna
that's right.
be whoever performs better. I think not necessarily which team wins; it's whoever performs better, obviously.
Although I
And I
think you
think,
do have to kind of use who wins because you could be saying, okay, well, he led his team to the playoffs.
yeah. But I mean, kind of, but you can't really say that because Bo Nix is in front and he lost to Washington earlier. So
Yeah,
like,
hmm
I also think though with that game, I think Oregon's been playing a lot better than
oh,
Washington.
so do I. I fully agree. I've watched both teams and
I don't
bring
know
up
if I
my
totally agree. I think they're pretty dead even.
no because
I don't.
no because the way I see it, Oregon came into Arizona State at away and just trounced them, and then Washington barely squeaked out a win at home against Arizona State, and that's a bottom 25 team in the
Yeah,
country.
I think
And
that was the one that kind of caught me off guard was the
yeah,
Arizona State game with Washington.
because like Arizona State's been like weird frisky, like they have Cam Scadaboo, who's really their only good player, and he's been good, but like they're dog water. They're the bottom 25 team. They got trounced in their rivalry game this weekend. Like, I mean, beating that team by 3 is not convincing at all, and that's why I think that is why that line is at the +9 for.
Yeah, it's 9.5 in favor of the Ducks. And the other thing is about this whole Washington debacle is with the way they beat Oregon too. And I'm gonna kind of talk about Oregon's ranking too after that game because that was a 7 versus 8 matchup. And Oregon dropped one spot after losing that game. I don't think I've ever seen that. Even with Ohio State, and Drew, to your credit, you don't think that they should have dropped like that far. I don't think I've ever seen a team drop one spot, like no matter how close it is. Like, so I think that really helped them too, because only dropping one spot, like you're right there in it. And I mean, I think it's also kind of goes to show that Oregon, a lot of people forget that Oregon lost that game because they missed a chip shot field goal
Yeah.
to tie the game. If the kicker makes it, they go to overtime. I'm not so sure Washington wins that.
Yeah, no.
And
that's
and with the way, of course, with the way they played after that too, because obviously when they met in like October or whatever, they were pretty even. But right now, with Oregon barely losing to Washington, and with the way both of those teams have handled their games after that one, like Oregon has kind of blown everybody out. With the exception of USC, they beat them by 9, and Washington's kind of been squeaking away with these wins. I think there's a clear difference in how both of those teams have handled the result of the head-to-head, the first head-to-head.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Oregon basically only lost that first game to Washington because Dan Lanning made some risky decisions that wind up costing him and his team, but they still have found their way back and get a rematch against Washington. And I think the 9.5 spread for Oregon, I think is perfect because Washington's been scraping by these horrible teams. Oregon's been dominating everyone, so I don't see how Washington can keep this close. I hope it's close, but I just don't see it. Oregon's been the better team ever since that game, and I think they prove it Friday night.
If it's close and Oregon wins, I think both teams make it.
Yeah, that could be a
Oregon wins in a blowout. I think there's a legitimate case that Washington gets bumped out.
Yeah,
I don't think if Washington loses, I don't think they're in at all because there's too many. There's too many good teams for them to be in. Like there's a lot that needs to happen for both Oregon and Washington to both get in.
Not really.
What that is because I think if Washington were to lose, they'd be 12-1. They would need Alabama and Texas to lose, and then it would come down to and Florida State to lose, and then it would come down to do you take them over Ohio State or not? And that gets a little bit interesting because I could go either way with that one. I dogged on Ohio State a lot here, but I'd probably lean. I'd probably still lean towards Washington, but that would be a lot more 50-50.
I think Washington gets absolutely gobsmacked by Michigan.
They do.
That's just my take. And
Washington's defense is just not that good. People want to say it's no.
I mean, it's a possibility.
I mean, they have 42 points to USC. Granted, USC's got a good offense.
USC just puts up. That's all they do.
Exactly, their defense is just.
I mean, they have the number one prospect in the draft. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't give up a lot of points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think most of the teams they face, they've given up. USC has gotten a lot of points and then just given up more points.
Yeah.
Morgan, how much did Arizona State put on Washington?
On Washington?
Wasn't it 15-7?
It was something like that. I think it was an ugly game, and Arizona State got screwed.
We did get screwed. The refs were bad that game.
I mean, Pac-12 refereeing is.
Yeah, that's some of the worst.
It's a whole different game.
Okay. 15-7. But then we beat Washington State the next week at home by 9. And then
Washington somehow struggled to beat Washington State.
Pretty much every other team other than UCLA, we've just gotten absolutely, and USC. We lost 42-28, but it was close for most of the game. But I mean, we only put up 49-13 to Oregon as opposed to 15-7. Like, that's just
I think that kind of shows Washington is just not as good as they were to start the year as they are right now.
So when we look at that game, are we all in agreement that Oregon wins
I think so,
relatively
yeah.
easily, or do you
No,
think it's going
I
to
don't
be?
think easily
I don't
because
know
it is.
relatively.
I'm not
It's
saying
it's
easily. I
not-
think it'll be tough, but
it's
I
the
think
Pac-12 championship game against a team that has been ranked in the top 5 for pretty much the whole year.
Yeah, and
So
again,
it's not
playoff.
going to be easy, but I think they
Yeah.
could.
I think it's
I
still
don't
a
think
win.
it's totally unreasonable to say either team would win.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think
And of course, I think that I don't think anybody would have a problem if the rankings hold. So Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State. I would be okay with it if those four teams win because they're all
Well,
undefeated. Obviously,
so
they're
would
gonna
I, as
get-
long as if Florida State holds their own against Louisville and wins, and they show that they're still completely fine without Jordan Travis, I'm fine with them staying in the 4 because this is my real tester game for them. Where if they can handle Louisville like they've had other teams, or at least just win by a score, probably 2 scores, I think that that guarantees them, and I'm completely fine with them getting because that's proven that they can still win without them.
Yeah.
So
I
do you
think
guys
that I
think?
think they'd be the worst team in the playoff, but I don't think it'd be atrocious to say that they still make it.
Yeah. Do you guys think Oklahoma State can keep it close with Texas?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think they can. They've kept
Yeah.
it close with good teams all year long. Um, please don't mention the UCF game.
What about South
But
Alabama?
all these other games, they've been, or that game. All these other like teams, they've been in it. I mean, they beat Oklahoma. They beat Kansas. I mean, they beat a lot of good teams, and I think they have a chance to go. I believe either the Fiesta Bowl or one of the like a New Year's Six Bowl, winning the Big 12.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do
no,
win
no,
the Big
yeah.
12. They could.
So there's a lot on the line here with all of these games. Playoff spot, winner to the playoffs in the Pac-12. Some might argue winner to the playoffs in the SEC title game. You've got Michigan needing to win because if Michigan loses, they're probably out.
Yeah,
If
Um,
Michigan loses to Iowa, they're out because
Yeah,
that's just
you can't lose to Iowa and still make the playoff.
But I think relatively decent rankings. I don't think there's anything too controversial,
There's
but I
nothing
know
super egregious in my eyes. Like,
some people might disagree with the whole Texas-Alabama thing.
I think I think Ohio State should not be above Texas and Alabama because, well, yes, Ohio State had the same record, but Ohio State's not playing for a conference championship, unlike Texas and
oh my
Alabama.
God.
I don't
Okay,
think
you weren't
Ohio
here.
State.
You weren't
Just-
here when we went
the
over
same
this,
thing.
but we sort of went over the
Big
fact
Ten-
that the Big Ten championship game is effectively Ohio State, Michigan.
Even though
It's
it,
not technically.
technically it's not.
No,
but
it's not
basically it
technically,
is.
but that's not what I said. It's effectively the Big Ten championship, which is a different thing.
Yeah.
Because
He
everybody
looks at-
knows that the winner of that game is like the best team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think you
I
can
just-
really
yeah.
hold that against them.
yeah. No.
And I also think that every team playing in, because I know that some teams are not able to play because of like the divisions or whatever. But I do think every team playing in the Power Five championship games are, with the exception of Iowa, are the two best teams in their conference.
I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
mean,
Oklahoma might. Okay, I know Oklahoma State did beat Oklahoma, but I would say Oklahoma's probably better than Oklahoma State.
it's close though.
It's kind of like a thing where like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma play 10 times on a neutral field. Maybe Oklahoma would
Is Texas
play
better
I don't know
Yeah.
because they beat them. Yes.
because they beat them?
Yep.
Well,
You have no
That's
problem.
So
true.
different. So different.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it
It
is.
it is
Yeah, it is.
completely different.
Absolutely. is.
Oklahoma is the team that has, along with their partners Notre Dame, should be banned from the college football playoff for the next 5 years because every time they make it, they're terrible in it.
You can say that about a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And don't even get me started on TCU last year. A waste of a point.
They beat Michigan.
I mean, I was gonna say TCU wasn't terrible. They just lost to Georgia because Georgia was.
Okay,
Because
no matter who was in the
Ohio State, Michigan, and Los Angeles for the
best chance of beating Georgia last year, and they blew it because
Georgia had 43-year-old Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, I know. Stetson Bennett was playing like his 8th year of college football in that game, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
People are saying Bo Nix is like Stetson Bennett, but at least Bo Nix is good.
Bo Nix is in his 5th year, right?
Yeah,
so.
that's
something else.
Wild. Stetson Bennett didn't graduate.
Stetson Bennett,
Stetson Bennett had 8 years of college football, and he doesn't have a college degree.
Stetson Bennett,
There's no chances of ever getting Stetson Bennett on the show, but like, how do you go through 8 years of college and don't get a degree?
He never graduated?
Nope.
No, he never graduated.
Oh, God.
And now he's a professional backup.
Yep.
And he got arrested for
college if you can make the NFL.
Didn't he get arrested for like drinking or something?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of quarterbacks have been.
That's fair.
Baker.
Yeah. Manziel.
Johnny Manziel, my goat. Fan control football league legend.
Johnny Manziel.
Did you know he was the MVP?
I gotta pose a question here.
Josh Gordon.
Oh my God, Josh Gordon. He was good.
He was good like a decade ago.
He was good. Stephen, I hated him.
I gotta pose a question here, about Oregon football. If Bo Nix were to win the Heisman, where do you rank him with Marcus Mariota and Justin Herbert
below
with
both
Oregon? You think so?
Yeah.
I think he's got better than Justin.
Marcus Mariota clears. Marcus Mariota was insane in college.
Marcus Mariota might be the best Heisman winner of all time.
Whoa.
No.
I'll put him second below
Joe. Yeah, I was going to say Joe Burrow threw for 60 touchdowns, and Barry Sanders ran for 48 touchdowns. 48 touchdowns. That's more than Marcus Mariota threw for.
Okay, but I still think Marcus Mariota.
No.
I think
no.
Burrow, Mariota, Reggie Bush,
Barry Sanders,
Michael James on the Heisman over Cam Newton. But we'll let it slide. And then I don't even know who you'd put at 5.
Barry Sanders.
Charles Woodson.
You just keep saying not Barry Sanders.
Not Barry. I go to this place too, and they were losing their mind when I said Reggie Bush over Barry Sanders.
Yeah, as they should.
As they should.
Devontae Smith, best Heisman winner of all time.
He was the best receiver to win.
No, Tim Brown.
Oh no, he wasn't. No way.
Get out of here. Devontae Smith won a Mickey Mouse Heisman.
No, he did not.
Yes, he did.
No, he did
and
not.
Ohio
he put up insane numbers.
Only played 6 games, and they still beat down on Clemson. So it was.
Yeah, well, that'll be down on Ohio State in the Natty.
Dude,
we're all ignoring the real question of. Now this is just a crap post of a stream of is Lightning McQueen the best racer of all time?
I saw that Stephen A. Smith clip.
Yeah.
I watched yesterday. I ended up because I had nothing
funny,
to do.
Dude.
I don't care about this. I watched all 3 Cars movies, and my ranking of top 5 best racers, and it's a little controversial. You go McQueen, Strip. I think you are Doc Hudson at 3. Some could argue 2.
Nobody knows who this is besides us.
What are we talking about here? Are we really talking How about? I think we're the only people on the planet that gone from a college football playoff talking about cars.
We pivoted in like 30 seconds too.
And just on a side note, the movie WALL-E is the worst movie.
Oh wow!
Probably
not even relevant. Just not even relevant.
It's just because you're immature and you have like 12 brain cells, so you don't understand.
WALL-E was good.
Wall-E was horrible, and it might be worse than The Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know. The Wolf of Wall Street is pretty.
What is wrong with you?
How are those movies comparable in any way?
They just are. You just gotta respect it.
And how are either of those in contention for worst movie of all time when
Because
Cars
they're
2
terrible.
exists?
Hey,
No.
Cars 2
You're
is
putting
objectively
forward-
a bad
Cars
movie.
2 is good.
No, it's
oh,
not.
it sucks.
It's
The Polar
objectively
Express is terrible.
absolutely hysterical to watch. It's super fun to watch, but it's a bad movie.
Morgan, I got a question for you. Where do you rank
Yes.
Jackson Storm?
Is
Jackson
Cars
Storm
2
is a
worse than
Mickey Mouse.
Godfather
Stop
3?
ranking Cars characters.
He lost to a listen. He lost to a car who had been in one race before.
But how does
Not
that
wrong.
affect LeBron's legacy?
It does affect LeBron's legacy actually because Jackson Storm is kind of like my goat, my Pookie Bear LeBron James in a way where people have had multiple debates over whether he deserves to be
All right.
the greatest of all time.
Well, Rick Pitino still has a 40 time under 15 seconds. So I mean that was but no, I think the Polar Express takes the worst movie title for me.
That is
Why?
bad.
Now you're just
That is
making.
bad one.
Okay, we're not even talking about sports anymore.
Yeah,
No, this is a variety stream now.
You want to talk about a bad movie? Talk about the Marvels.
All right,
I haven't seen it.
It's
we're gonna stop you right there, Jack.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to stop him right there. But Jeff, I just want to. You do know like the Barry Sanders statistics, right? Like you're not totally.
Well, I know he's, but it comes down all of these things. There's so many good Heisman winners, and you could compare stats or whatever. It really comes down to personal preference because
No,
some
it
of these
doesn't.
guys.
This
no,
is-
it doesn't.
This is objectively the greatest running back Heisman season ever.
Compared to Reggie Bush? Does it beat him?
Yes, it beats literally everybody. He
All right,
rushed
then
for
I guess-
2,800 yards.
How much did Reggie Bush rush for?
I'm gonna
Less.
let me get that right now. Oh wait, this might not be on the website. Yeah, it's not
yeah,
on the website.
It disappeared like Louisville's 2013 Final Four banner.
Okay,
It disappeared like
he had
Arizona's $240
2,600 all-purpose yards
Okay.
versus Barry Sanders 2,800 rushing yards, and
How
Barry
many rushing
Sanders
yards?
had I think 37 touchdowns, and Bush
Yeah.
had 18.
Bush had 18.
Yep.
Yes. And Barry Sanders at 37.
All right, so I guess I have to put Barry Sanders over.
Yeah,
him.
I was gonna let me break this down for you, Barney style. That is
Hey, don't disrespect Barney. He got
that
fired.
is 20. He had 21 more touchdowns. Than
All right, so
Reggie
let me
Bush.
choose my list.
Okay.
Joe Burrow,
Okay.
Marcus Mariota, Barry Sanders, Reggie Bush, and Derrick Henry too. Can't forget about Derrick Henry. He was great.
Hey, Barney could have been a great lineman. He was like 6 foot. Wild. Let's see how much he weigh.
Derrick Henry is a great
350. Dude's a tank, bro. Put him on the O line.
Like the cartoon guy.
Yeah.
Funny story about Barney, and this could get me taken off the stream, but
We
I'm
are
just
live.
gonna-
We are live.
Live. So here's what happened with Barney: is that the guy in the suit
Oh no.
did some pretty, like interesting things that got him like kicked, like that got him fired from essentially being Barney. I don't know how bad do you have to screw up in life to be kicked off from being Barney.
I
Like,
mean,
come
Barney's
on.
kind of a goat if you think about it because everybody knows the song where you flush Barney down the toilet or whatever after you like chop him up and stuff.
Do what?
The children's rhyme.
No, I
You know
don't
what
think
I'm talking
everybody
about?
knows this.
Oh, but maybe that was just my school. Maybe my school
Yep.
just messed up.
Yep.
Oh, is that
No.
where like you flush him down the toilet or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
See, he
Well, there was
knows.
also something shoved in his tail.
Whatever.
I won't say
You know
what
what?
it is.
Let's get us a little bit back on track here. I want to submit Archie Griffin's second Heisman season. He won back-to-back Heismans.
Who?
So Archie Griffin,
Who's that?
the only
What?
player to ever win 2 Heismans.
1357, 7 touchdowns.
The second one, he had what am I looking for here? He rushed for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns, which of course isn't super great, but
Yeah, no.
you
Where's
know,
your
it
argument?
won him the second Heisman. That's crazy to follow up a Heisman season with another Heisman season.
That might be worse than any of Tom Brady's Super Bowl MVP award stat lines.
Here we go.
It's gonna be it's a weekly mention. At this.
Just not relevant. But okay, let's jump into our
Objection, relevant.
episode segment of Why Tom Brady Sucks by Jeff.
Yeah, this is gonna
Let's
be a
go into
weekly.
It's a pretty standard installment in these. Is
Yeah,
somehow we end up on the topic of Tom Brady.
It gets cut out a lot because it's the same
Oh, yeah.
thing usually over and over
90%
again, but we'll leave it in.
So,
All right, well, we got our thoughts out about these college football playoff rankings. I think we are going to do another one of these for the final rankings,
yeah.
and that'll be interesting to see how that goes down. But anybody who tuned in, we thank you for watching the first ever live broadcast of On the Board, and we will be back at some point in time. So, thank you for watching. You don't even
What?
go there, Jeff.
Oh,
Yeah, you're gonna. Your team's in a Big 12. Your team is in the Big 12 championship.
Hey, my team is in the Big 12 championship and the Pac-12 championship.
Shut up. My team's in
I've
neither.
liked them for 10 years. So
My team's in the SEC championship. Beat that.
Eastern
Jeff.
Illinois, I hate to break it to you guys, is not in a Power
My
5
team went
championship.
3-9.
oh,
The
Eastern
Bearcats.
Illinois did better than that.
Yeah, okay. Well, Eastern Illinois is playing in like what?
Shut up.
The nothing?
Ohio Valley, shut up.
Oh my gosh, Ohio Valley.
I want to get back on this Barney thing. Did you guys know what
Yeah.
Barney did? The guy that played Barney in the suit was fired because he kept swearing at kids on the set and had
Yeah.
cocaine shoved in its tail.
Oh my gosh.
Screw
That's
it.
What?
actually insane.
Real thing. I'm not making that up. Just
That was
cursing.
also
at
in-
real-
Morgan, did you know
Oh,
that in
I gotta go.
2035, Eastern Illinois travels to Tuscaloosa and Alabama's paying them $5 million or something like that?
Oh, yeah. Prepare to get upset.
Dude, that would actually be so funny. Dude, some
I was
Dude,
fine.
I
we,
will
got,
have
we actually
no
had a
wall.
couple chats. We actually had where'd Jeff go?
Wait, we did? Actually?
Jeff just left.
Yeah.
Did we actually?
So
That's
okay,
crazy.
we got one that said, "Hey boys, cool stream." We got this guy chatted 3 times. He said Michigan hasn't played anyone but Ohio State and Penn State, whatever. And then he goes, "Guy on top right needs to be kicked off this thing y'all got going on here." And at the
Was that
time,
Jack?
that was me at the time. And then he goes, "Dude on the bottom is the only one who knows what he's talking about."
That's guaranteed one of Jeff's friends.
It has to be.
It's every one of those friends that from like another fucking room.
Now you can kick me
Yeah.
off this, but there will be no stream.
Yeah, there'll be no more uploads because I mean I know how to edit, but like
Yeah, but you don't know what
No,
how to do any of
I
this.
also don't have access to any of the on the board.
No, you do.
Oh, I do.
I
Okay.
think I put all the passwords in the chat, but I would like to see a Morgan upload.
Dude, it gets rough because I've uploaded to one YouTube. It's since been deleted, but I have uploaded a YouTube video once. It was